Bouncing back from a absolute terrible month, right? This is something that in real estate we experience probably more than anybody else in the entire world, I feel like. It doesn't matter what type of sales you're in. You obviously, there are warm months, cold months, good months, bad months. What you've got to be able to process is, how do you bounce back? How do you go through that process and come out the other side? Because once a closer, always a closer. If you can close one deal, you can close two deals. The idea behind it is, how do you get through that? And this is going to be applicable across the board, whether you're in sales, whether you're, whatever you're in, but also in life, right? The idea that you can have the ability to persevere no matter what's happening in your life, that is the ultimate goal, right? That's what we're all shooting for. We want to be able to be the David Goggins of life. And I think there's a certain aspect that you have to bring to that. You have to, maybe not turn into a machine, but you have to be able to look at the data. You have to be able to handle what's the stress that's being put upon you, and then be able to make an actual good decision from a bad place. And that, I think, is where winners are created personally. And that's the type of person that I look up to and aspire from, is the idea that someone can be in an absolute terrible situation and then flip it and become something much, much better. And that to me means more than the person who is at the very top of their game and have always been at the top of their game and they've never had any bad in their life. I don't care as much about that. I care about the person who has had struggle, who has been through, and whether that success is monetary or not. Let's say that they've been poor and then they're rich. They're poor and then they're rich. The idea that they've been able to come back from the depths of whatever their life has given them, and then they are able to flip that and still achieve what they were going to achieve. And so that's what today's video is about. And personal experience with this is, it was either last year or the year before, we had, probably 16 or 17 properties under contract, and the entire team was just fired up. It was right before summer, so we were expecting an even better summer, and we were stoked, right? Everything was the vibes were high. Everybody's high-fiving. Everybody's in a good mood. And then Friday came, and I don't know what happened, but the world just flipped upside down on us. There were multiple terminations within a matter of a week, right? So we saw on Monday there was like one or two that fell off, and we were like, oh, it's cool, we still got 14 on the board still, and then two more fell off, and then three more fell off, and then there were like back-to-back issues, and then so like it was a domino effect. And at the end of the week, by Friday, we had like two on the board. It was just absolute chaos that entire week, and you just saw the morale just dive. I mean, deep dive from a high board, just freaking just all the way down, and the morale just was terrible. Everybody's kind of out on edge. Everybody's kind of at each other. The willingness to make phone calls is down. Everybody's just beat, and that was one of the biggest things that me as a leader, I'm realizing externally, but I'm also, crushed internally because my own stuff got beat up. And most importantly, I'm noticing that my guys are just not in a good mood. They're not in a good place mentally. They're not where they need to be able to get out of this bump in the road. And when that happened, there's things that are said in certain moments. There's comments that are made that can be like a cancer inside of a team, that, oh man, we're never going to get out of this. I can't believe this happened. The negativity, the negative plague is just spreading through the office. And I'm having to process my own stress. I'm having to process the team stress. I'm having to look at the team and say, we're going to be able to get out of this, and not from a place of just optimism, but genuinely meaning what I'm saying and giving a plan behind that. And that was probably one of the harder things to do is pulling myself out of that moment, but then also trying to pull the team and just pull them out of that rut. And some of the things that I had to do to be able to do that are what I'm going to probably talk about a little bit more in depth today. But that's the first experience of just absolute just mass death in the team. And so I had to sit down and take a minute and be able to process what was happening, and then realize that, you know, if we were able to put 16 on the board, we should be able to put 16 right back on the board. And that was the biggest correlation between the two, is like, if it was done before, then it can be done again. And if this has never happened before, then it may not, the idea that it may not ever happen again is impossible. But now understand how to manage what was happening. We understand what the issues were, and then we can debrief and pull back and say, okay, where are we at? What do we have to do? And then what is the path forward to be able to get back on board? And that was probably one of the more harder things to do, is actually figure out what the path was to get back on. And to me, the answer is always more. It's always more. It's always the idea that, you know, if we're in this thing, volume will always beat the lack of volume, and that's my go-to, right? It's how do we bring the team back together? How do we build back up morale? How do we bring back some things back on the board so we're not so beat up? And, you know, I also being able to look at my guys and be like, I'm looking them in the face and I'm like, guys, we're in a bad spot. This shit happened, and now we have to maneuver. We have to pivot. We have to handle what's happening in front of us, and be able to understand why this happened and how this could have happened, and make sure that it never happens again. And so there's a few pieces that I want to break into. The first step is understanding what's going on. So it's a data point, right? Everything is a data point when it comes to real estate, business. Everything is derived off of data. And especially in sales in general, like the idea that this is such a numbers game, and once you understand the numbers, then you can genuinely start to level up in this game. And so it's a data point, right? A bad month, a bad week, something has changed, and you have to figure out what has changed, what's wrong, and what do we need to do to resolve that. So data point number one, you need to be able to stop grading yourself and look at what the data is telling you. There's always something that has changed. There's always, you know, something that changed with you, how you were handling those things. But ultimately, it's not about you. Like, a bad month is not a bad you. And a lot of times that's the first way out, right? Because in our brains is like, especially if you're, you know, a business owner, you think that if your business is doing bad, you were doing bad. And that's not a direct correlation necessarily. It just means that you are doing something different that you were not doing, and that's where stability can really take a play, and we'll go deeper into that as well. But the first piece to all of this is just because you feel bad, just because you don't want to make the calls, just because you are beat up and you feel like you're just, you know, you're in overtime and you just need to give up and the game's just not going your way, that is the absolute time to hammer. And I mean, go so hard that there is no way that you can't come out of this. And that was the first piece that I addressed, was this doesn't mean that we're not good. That doesn't mean that we're doing bad. This doesn't mean anything negative on you as an individual. What this means is we now have to go harder than we were going. And especially when things start getting really good, people tend to lack on their laurels. I think that's the term. And they stop doing what got them to that space, thus the roller coaster of sales that a lot of people are always on. And so you've got to not let off the gas. You've got to hammer that gas 0 to 60, like everything you've got, just go. And that is the first time, or the first step, to realize, okay, I got these data points. I need to hammer on what I'm doing, and then I can then now assess. So my second point here is going to be, it is always going to be one or two of these three things. You've got conversion has gone down, you've got activity has gone down, or you've got the market has adjusted. And you've got to be able to determine which three or which one of these three items has changed for your business, or how you were handling productivity, or how you were handling your activity. All of these things are going to be assets to learn from. So we can look at conversion. We can look at our numbers. As long as we're tracking, we can say, okay, I was calling 400 people a week, and now I got really busy and I was only calling 100 people a week. All right, so that's probably something there. And then from my 400, I was closing, two people a week. All right, well, what is my number now at 100? It's 0. Okay, so the activity dropped. All right, so now that I understand these points, I know where I need to be back at, right? Or I need to double that amount of effort to be able to make up the gap in difference. And so that is something that you need to be able to focus on, you need to be able to address, and then apply to what's going on. So let's say that you have not been tracking whatsoever, and you have no idea what your numbers are, you don't know what's going on. Then understanding that guessing is not going to be a problem solver. It's simply just it's a shot in the dark. And that's where a lot of people mess up, because they stop tracking when things get good. They stop tracking when things get really bad. They stop doing the data points, and without data points you can't make adjustments in what you need to do. So therefore, if you have not done that, and let's say that you haven't, then what do you need to do to be able to figure that out? One, start tracking this week. Once you track this week, you can understand, okay, I made 100 calls, didn't make any difference, nothing changed. Okay, so now I'm going to double that back up for the next week. Boom, I double it up. And at 200, I had some really good conversations, but nobody's out on appointments. Okay, so now I'm gonna do double that. So now I'm back at 400. And now I'm starting to notice, okay, I'm with all of these people, all of these contacts, I'm starting to show people now. Okay, all right, so now we can assess that. How many houses do I have to show them to get them under contract? And all of this is still transitioned, and you can still transition this to life. You can transition this to whatever amount of business that you're doing, because at the end of the day, it's sales, right? We're all in sales. We just got to figure out what type of sales we're in, and then we can start to kind of maneuver what's going on. To tie this into more of a personal aspect, let's say that we've got a certain monthly budget that we've got to hit, and we are realizing, okay, we're coming up short on rent this month. Okay, so what have I been doing in the past that was allowing me to make that rent? Okay, well, I was working 40 hours a week. The past couple of weeks, I've only been getting 32 hours, right? Obviously, that's an easy assessment, but then we can still apply the more factor to that. So we can say, okay, well, what if I did this, this, and this? Would that apply more directly to the goal? Is it going to apply to this? Then we can say, okay, yeah, that would resolve my problem here, and then bing, bada, boom, I'm there. So how does that apply to more personal aspects outside of fiscal things? I would say the idea that you have data points in your relationships, you have data points in how you were going about things, because in friendship, if you realize that you're not connecting with people the way that you used to, you can then go back and say, okay, what was I doing differently that was working, right? When I was enjoying my life, when I was doing these things, what was I doing? And then I can look back in that and say, okay, well, I was working out every morning. I was, calling my mom every day. Whatever those positions are. And then you can then work that out and say, okay, well, what am I not doing right now? I'm not doing this, this, and this. And then you can flip it and say, okay, if I don't want to feel better, what would I not do? Or just do the opposite of what you're doing right now, and you're probably going to be in a better spot. And that's ultimately what I'm trying to get to is the idea that whatever problem that you're in or whatever rut that you're in, you can always make an adjustment out of it as long as you start realizing that there are things that are more consistent and less consistent in what you're doing in your daily life. And then the third point is really, I mean, technically we've already touched on this, but it's working yourself out of that rut. That is the number one thing that I press is, yeah, you're not going to feel good. You're like, yeah, dude, you had 8 things fall off the board. You're not going to feel good. You're going to want to quit. And you have to make the assessment. And I literally had to sit one of my guys down on this, and we had a really good conversation about it. I was like, you want to quit right now, right? You want to go do these other things. Okay, what does that look like? How does that look for you if you decide that you want to just quit what you're doing here and go and do this? Yeah, you're going to get paid each week. Yeah, it's going to be a guaranteed thing, but are you happy? Is that bringing you closer to your goal, or is it putting you back on the track that you were on before? And you've got to be able to assess that and say, okay, I know it sucks right now. I know that you don't want to do the things that you need to do, but you have to. You have to keep plugging along and punching your way out of this and doing the amount of work that you are needing to do to get out of this rut. And you can do it. And it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fun, but you can do it. And that is the difference is you being able to say that to somebody and then they are like, Roger that. I can figure that out, right? And then giving an exact assessment of saying, hey, this is the game plan. This is how you're going to get out of this. And if it's not, let's say that you don't have anybody around you that is able to do that for you, then you have to do it for yourself. And that can be difficult. But the number one thing that I would say with that is build your task list out, right? Start somewhere. Get your data points. Start moving forward in the amount of work that you're doing. If you're not doing enough, if you're still, not tired at the end of the night, do more. Do more of whatever you've got to do to get yourself out of that tough place, and it will work, right? You've got to have faith that at the end of the day, this is all going to work out, and it will. Without a fucking doubt, it is going to work as long as you work the plan, and as long as you can apply the amount of effort that needs to be applied. And if you don't want to do that, then you need to get out of the business. You need to stop doing what you're doing, and you need to go back to doing whatever you were doing before that is going to at least give some balance to your life. That's it. I think ultimately that was the biggest piece. I just wanted to be able to assess that for you and show you, like, at the end of the day, with my team, we were able to pop back out of it because we made the assessments. We looked at our lead sources. We looked at how we were going under contracts with leads. We looked at our lead flow. We looked at how are we talking to the people that are coming in? Are we qualifying these people good enough? And it turned out that we were not qualifying the people as well as we should have been. And our conversion was down because we were not putting in enough phone calls. And so we fixed the phone call thing. We fixed how we were talking to people. And ultimately that came out on the other side with a very good year. We closed out that year better than we ever have, and it was all due to the simple fact that we put in the effort and applied real logical effort to what we were doing and not basing things off of how we were feeling in those moments. So if you like any of this content, if this was beneficial, like, share, subscribe as usual. I'm super appreciative of this entire thing. I appreciate just anyone who's willing to take the time and listen to what I've got to say. It's not a lot and it's not amazing, but I have learned some things in this business, and I want to be able to throw that out there, and hopefully it benefits someone somewhere somehow. And that is what means the world to me. So I appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon.